The stars shone like scattered diamonds across the endless black of space. Captain Elias Kane adjusted the controls of his small human fighter, feeling the familiar hum of the engines beneath his hands. Humanity had been at war with the Zitherans for nearly a decade. The aliens were stronger, faster, and had technology far beyond anything humans had. Yet, humans had one thing that the Zitherans underestimated: courage and quick thinking. Elias had flown hundreds of missions, each more dangerous than the last, but nothing had prepared him for what he was about to face. His mission today was simple on paper: scout the Zitheran perimeter and report any weaknesses. Simple, but dangerous. Every pilot knew that once a Zitheran spotted a human craft, escape was never guaranteed. As he approached the outer edge of Zitheran space, his sensors detected movement. A structure, partially destroyed, hovered above a small rocky planet. Something was inside. Curiosity mixed with duty, and Elias carefully maneuvered his ship closer. He could see it now. A child, small and fragile, trapped under twisted metal. The sight struck him like a lightning bolt. The child was Zitheran, her delicate blue skin marred by dirt and scratches. She struggled weakly, crying in a language he did not understand. Elias hesitated. He was not supposed to interfere. Zitherans were enemies and orders were clear: observe, report, survive. Yet something in him refused to turn away. A human instinct, simple and powerful, surged inside him. He had to help her. He landed the fighter carefully, kicking up dust as the landing legs settled. The child's eyes widened at his approach. She tried to crawl toward him, but debris blocked her path. Elias moved quickly, using his strength to lift the heavy metal beams. It was dangerous. The structure could collapse at any moment. "Hold still," he shouted, even though he knew she could not understand him. The child froze, fear in her wide, luminous eyes. With one final heave, Elias lifted the metal, freeing her. She fell into his arms, trembling. He wrapped his jacket around her small body, protecting her from the biting wind that whipped across the rocky planet. Suddenly, a warning blared on his ship's sensors. Zitheran patrols were approaching fast. Elias had no time to waste. He sprinted toward his fighter, careful not to stumble with the child in his arms. He could hear the distant hum of enemy engines closing in. As he took off, the ground shook beneath him. Explosions rocked the ruins behind him. Elias focused on the controls, weaving the fighter skillfully between rocks and debris. His heart pounded, but his mind stayed sharp. Humans were known for resilience, and he relied on it now. The child clung to him, her small hands pressing against his chest. She whimpered softly, and Elias spoke gently, hoping to calm her. "It's okay. You're safe now. I won't let anything happen to you." For the first time, she looked at him without fear. Her wide eyes reflected gratitude, something he had not expected from an enemy species. He realized then that this small life, so fragile and innocent, was more important than orders, strategy, or even the war itself. The Zitheran patrol closed in, their sleek ships cutting through the darkness of space. Elias knew he could not fight them all. He had to rely on human ingenuity. He engaged the stealth mode on his fighter, a risky maneuver that would hide him from enemy sensors for only a short while. The patrols scanned the area, engines humming, but they could not detect him. Elias took a deep breath, navigating through a narrow asteroid field. The rocks were treacherous, but humans had something Zitherans did not: flexibility and unpredictability. He weaved through the field, the child clutching him tightly. Hours passed. The patrols gave up, believing the fighter had vanished. Elias finally relaxed, though only slightly. He had saved the child, but the danger was far from over. She needed food, water, shelter, and most importantly, protection. And he would give it all, no matter the cost. Back on the human side of space, he set the fighter down on a quiet, hidden base. The child's eyes widened at the unfamiliar surroundings. Humans bustled around, unaware of the treasure in their midst. Elias carried her carefully, introducing her to a small room filled with warmth and light. He offered her water and simple food, though she hesitated, unsure what to make of these new humans. Slowly, she ate, her trust growing in small, careful steps. Elias watched her closely, feeling a protective instinct stronger than anything he had known. He knew the decision to rescue her would change everything. The war, his mission, and even his life. Nothing would be the same. But as he looked into her eyes, something stirred inside him. Hope. Not just for the child, but for humanity itself. Because in that moment, he realized something profound. Humans were not the strongest in the galaxy. They were not the fastest or the most advanced. But they had a courage, a heart, and a willingness to do what was right, no matter the risk. And sometimes, that was enough to change everything. Far, above, hidden behind a cloud of space dust, Queen Solara watched. She had seen Elias save her daughter, witnessed the bravery of a human firsthand. Rage and disbelief warred with admiration in her mind. Who was this human to defy her and save what belonged to her? She would find him, she would know him, and somehow she felt a strange pull toward him, one she could not yet understand. For now, Elias only focused on the child in his care. He had succeeded in saving her life, and that was enough. But in the shadows of the galaxy, new challenges waited, and the story of the human who dared to save an enemy child was only just beginning. Captain Elias Kane did not sleep that night. Not because he was afraid, but because the small Zitharan child in his care needed constant attention. Lyra, as he had learned to call her, shivered under the thin blanket he had found. Her small hands trembled, and her luminous eyes darted around the room, frightened by every sound. Elias had seen many things in his life. War, destruction, chaos. But the vulnerability of this child struck a chord in him that nothing else ever had. He checked the communications console. Human Command had already sent out alerts about his unsanctioned mission. Warnings flashed in red. Protocol violation, enemy personnel removed. Elias knew the consequences could be severe, yet as he looked at Lyra, all his doubts vanished. He had done the right thing. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly, silent witnesses to the drama unfolding. But not all watchers were silent. Far, in Zitharan space, a sleek, iridescent fleet moved swiftly toward the human sector. Queen Solara, mother of the child he had rescued, directed the operation personally. Solara's mind was a storm of emotions. Rage at the human for interfering. Worry for her daughter's safety. Confusion at the strange, undeniable courage she had witnessed. No Zitharan had ever defied her in this way, especially a human. And yet, here was one, risking everything for her child. Back on the hidden human base, Elias worked to make Lyra comfortable. The child, still wary, had begun to mimic some human gestures. She reached out for his hand, and he held it gently. Small victories like these gave him hope. He made a cot for her in a quiet room, brought her food, and tried to explain in simple words that she was safe now. "They cannot hurt you," Elias said softly. "I will protect you." Lyra tilted her head, as if trying to understand him. Then tentatively she reached out and touched his hand. Elias smiled. It was a small connection, but a start. Human Command, however, was less forgiving. A group of officers entered the room, their expressions stern. "Captain Kane," one said sharply, "you know what you've done. You've violated direct orders. You could be court-martialed." Elias met their gaze without fear. "I saved her life," he replied. "She is a child, an innocent. That is more important than any order." The officers exchanged uneasy glances. Some admired his courage. Others shook their heads. They did not fully understand why he had risked everything for an alien child. But Elias did not care. He had made his choice. Meanwhile, in the depths of space, Queen Solara's fleet drew closer. Her ships were faster, more powerful, and far more numerous than the human patrols. Yet she hesitated to attack immediately. Elias had not fled to Zitharan space. He had chosen to bring her daughter to safety, and for that, she could not bring herself to destroy him outright. Instead, Solara ordered reconnaissance. Small scouting ships slipped through the void, observing the human base. Every movement, every gesture, every interaction between Elias and Lyra was recorded. She wanted to understand this human, this creature brave enough to defy an entire empire to save her child. Elias, unaware of the approaching fleet, worked through the night. He fashioned a small cradle for Lyra and brought her blankets. He had scavenged human food that he thought she might tolerate. Slowly, she began to relax, the fear in her eyes replaced by curiosity. At one point, Lyra pointed at the stars outside, the window. Elias followed her gaze and saw the faint silhouette of a ship passing in the distance. He froze, heart pounding. Could it be? He checked the sensors. A small fleet was approaching, moving fast, precise. His breath caught in his throat. Zitherans. They were close, too close. He turned to Lyra. "We have to leave. Now," he said, urgency in his voice. She looked at him, eyes wide, but she trusted him. That trust made him stronger, gave him clarity. He knew what he had to do. Elias moved quickly, loading her into the fighter. He took off before the human officers could stop him. The base faded below them and the black emptiness of space stretched ahead. Solara's scouts followed silently. The small fighter rested on the barren surface of the planet, dust swirling gently in the thin atmosphere. Captain Elias Kane sat beside Lyra, studying her quietly as she explored the cabin of the ship. She had grown more confident in the last few days, walking on her small legs and examining every corner of the cockpit with fascination. Elias smiled. The bond was growing stronger, but the silence of the planet could not last. Above them, a massive shadow stretched across the sky. Human, sensors blared warnings. Multiple Zithran ships had entered orbit. Their engines gleamed like silver threads against the black of space. Queen Solara herself had arrived. Elias felt a tension tighten in his chest. He had trained for combat, for ambushes, for situations far worse than this. But he had never faced an alien queen, especially not one whose child he had rescued. Every instinct told him to hide, to run, to prepare for the worst. Yet he could not bring himself to abandon Lyra. Not now. The Zithran ships landed gracefully on the planet, far larger and more advanced than his small fighter. From the largest ship, a figure descended. Solara was tall, regal, and commanding. Her blue skin glowed faintly in the planet's dim light, and her eyes, filled with both fury and curiosity, locked onto Elias immediately. Elias stood to meet her. "I am Captain Elias Kane," he said steadily, though his heart raced. "I am responsible for her safety. I will not let anyone harm her." Solara's gaze softened slightly at the words. She studied him, noting the calm courage in his stance, the sincerity in his eyes. Yet she could not forget that he was human, an enemy. "You saved her," Solara said, her voice calm but firm. "And that is why you are alive. Most humans would have left her to die." Elias nodded. "I did what I thought was right. She is a child. Innocent. That is more important than orders or war." A brief silence passed. Then Solara spoke again. "You risked everything for her. For that, I owe you a debt. And perhaps more." Her tone carried a strange weight, one Elias did not understand. Lyra, standing between them, looked from Elias to her mother. She sensed the tension, the unspoken questions in Solara's mind. She reached for Elias's hand, and he took it gently. Solara studied them both. "You are different from what I expected of humans," she said finally. "Clever, brave, and compassionate. Traits my people respect, though few possess them." Elias felt a mixture of relief and caution. "I am just a human," he said, simply. "I do what I can." The queen tilted her head, observing him. "Perhaps that is enough. Perhaps humans have more to offer than I realized." Elias realized then that this was more than a simple confrontation. Solara was testing him, not with weapons, but with understanding. She wanted to see if his heart was as strong as his courage. For hours, they talked. Words were limited by language barriers, but both found ways to communicate. Elias used simple phrases and gestures, while Solara's attendants translated where possible. Slowly, a fragile trust began to form. Solara explained the risks Lyra had faced in her world, the dangers humans had not seen, and the strict rules of Zitharan society. Elias listened, absorbing every word. He realized the child he had saved was not just a daughter, but a symbol of hope and innocence for an entire species. "I have questions," Solara said finally. "Questions about you, about your motives, but more than that, I want to understand why you cared enough to act against your orders." Elias met her gaze. "Because it was the right thing to do," he said simply. "Because no matter who we are, protecting the innocent is what matters. Humans survive because we care, because we take risks for what is right, and because we refuse to turn away from those in need." Solara's expression shifted subtly. There was respect there mingled with something else, curiosity, admiration, and perhaps even something she did not yet understand. Lyra, sensing the change in her mother, smiled faintly at Elias. He returned the smile, feeling a warmth he had not known in years of war. For a moment, the galaxy outside seemed distant and unimportant. Here, in this small cabin, they were simply a protector, a child, and a mother. But reality could not be ignored. Solara's fleet remained in orbit, a silent reminder that danger was never far. "You cannot stay here forever," she said, "and neither can you return to your people with her, not yet. The risk is too great." Elias nodded, understanding her concern. "Then we will find a way," he said. "I will keep her safe, and I will find a way for both our peoples to understand each other. That is the only path forward." Solara studied him for a long moment. "Perhaps there is more in humans than I realized," she admitted quietly. "Perhaps your actions can change the future, not just for your people, but for mine as well." For the first time, Elias felt a glimmer of hope. Not just for Lyra, but for a larger purpose. He had saved a life, yes, but maybe this act of courage could bridge worlds. The sun began to rise over the barren horizon, casting light on the small fighter and the larger ships in orbit. Elias knew the journey ahead would be perilous. Humans and Zitharans were still at war, and trust would not come easily. But for now, they had spoken. They had understood each other, even if only a little. And in that fragile understanding lay the seeds of something extraordinary, something that might change the course of history for both species. Solara extended her hand to Elias. It was a gesture of truce, of respect, and of cautious hope. Elias shook it firmly. A silent promise passed between them. They would protect Lyra together, and perhaps together, they could find a new way forward. Lyra looked up at them both, sensing the bond forming. She smiled, a small, genuine smile that lit up the room. Elias knew then that every risk he had taken, every order he had defied, had been worth it. Above them, the stars shone like diamonds, silent witnesses to a new alliance forming, not just between human and Zitharan, but between courage, compassion, and hope. And so, the first contact had been made. Words had bridged the gap between enemies, and a human had proven that even in the darkest war, one act of bravery could light the way for a better future. The small cabin was quiet now, the hum of the ship's systems filling the space. Captain Elias Kane watched Lyra sleep, her small chest rising and falling with each gentle breath. He could feel the weight of responsibility pressing on him, heavier than any enemy fleet he had ever faced. She was no longer just a child in need. She was a symbol, a spark that could ignite hope between two warring species. Queen Solara had agreed to stay nearby, aboard a discreet ship in orbit. She was not here to fight, not yet, but to observe and ensure her daughter's safety. Elias respected her presence, even though it made the already complicated situation more delicate. He knew that every choice he made would be judged by both humans and Zytherans, and the margin for error was slim. "Are you awake?" Silara's voice came softly through the communicator. Elias straightened. She had a calm, almost regal tone, but there was a hint of curiosity in it. "Yes," he replied. "She's sleeping now. I wanted to make sure she's comfortable." Silara's voice softened. "You have done more than that. You have shown her any kindness, something my people do not see often from humans." Elias nodded. "Humans survive because we care. We take risks for what is right, not just for ourselves, but for others. That is what matters." There was a pause on the other end. Then Silara said quietly, almost to herself, "Perhaps humans are not so different from us after all." Elias felt a small spark of hope. If even Silara could see that, maybe there was a way to build something better. But he also knew that the road ahead would be difficult. Misunderstandings were inevitable, and some on both sides would never forgive his choices. The next morning, he began preparations for the journey ahead. Supplies had to be checked, routes plotted, and defenses ready. He would need to move frequently to avoid detection by hostile forces, yet he had to keep Lyra safe and comfortable. Every decision mattered. Lyra, now awake, climbed onto his lap, chattering in her alien language. Elias listened, smiling as best he could, trying to understand her sounds. He had learned a few words, enough to ask simple things like, "Hungry?" or "Thirsty?" She responded with bright eyes and nods, her trust growing. "Don't worry, Lyra," he said softly. "We'll make it, I promise." As they prepared to depart, Silara contacted him again. "Elias," she said, "I want to speak with you, directly. There are matters of trust we must discuss if we are to protect Lyra together." He nodded, adjusting the communicator. "I'm listening." Silara's voice was calm but firm. "I am your ally now. You have earned that by saving my daughter. But understand this. Both our peoples are watching. There are humans who will question your actions and Zytherans who will see you as a threat. You must navigate carefully." "I understand," Elias replied. "I will do what is necessary to keep her safe, and to show that humans can be more than soldiers or fighters. We can help. We can create something better." Silara was silent for a moment. "Perhaps that is what your kind can do. Perhaps that is the hope for the future." Elias felt a surge of determination. He had faced impossible odds before, but this challenge was different. It required more than courage. It required wisdom, empathy, and a willingness to bridge worlds. Their journey began in earnest. Elias piloted the fighter with Lyra by his side, moving from hidden location to hidden location, avoiding patrols and reconnaissance drones. He used human ingenuity, predicting enemy movements and taking unexpected paths through asteroid fields and nebula. The stars glimmered cold and distant, but for Captain Elias Kane there was no time to admire their beauty. Lyra clutched his arm tightly as he piloted their small fighter through a dense asteroid field. His eyes scanned the instruments, alert for any sign of danger. He had expected Zytheran patrols, but what came next was far worse. A rogue faction of Zytherans, unhappy with Queen Silara's cautious approach, had detected them. Their sleek ships moved with deadly precision, cutting off possible escape routes. Elias's stomach tightened. These were not scouts, they were hunters, and they would not stop until they had taken Lyra. "Stay close," he whispered to the child, who pressed her face against his chest. Her small hands trembled, but her trust in him was absolute. That trust gave him strength. He had faced countless battles before, but this was different. The stakes were personal. The first rogue fighter lunged from behind an asteroid, its energy, cannons charging. Elias acted instinctively. He pulled the controls sharply, weaving through the floating rocks. The cannon fire missed by inches, slicing a trail of sparks across the void. Humans were known for creativity under pressure, and he used every instinct, every trick to stay ahead. Another ship joined the chase, flanking him from the side. Elias gritted his teeth. The odds were against him. He had speed, skill, and ingenuity, but sheer numbers were dangerous. He needed a plan, and he needed it fast. He scanned the asteroid field, noticing a cluster of jagged rocks ahead. "Hang on, Lyra," he said. "This is going to be tricky." He dove into the rocks, using them as cover. The pursuing ships followed, but their larger size made it harder for them to maneuver. Elias took advantage of every narrow passage, every shadow. He was human, unpredictable, and that unpredictability became his greatest weapon. From orbit, Queen Solara watched, her expression tense. She wanted to intervene, but the rogue faction was far from her command. Her eyes, however, never left Elias. He was outnumbered, but he moved with precision, courage, and cunning. This human was more than a pilot. He was a protector, a symbol of hope. Elias spotted a narrow canyon ahead. It was risky, but it offered a chance. He dove into it, the walls of rock scraping past the hull. The rogue ships followed, their movements less agile. One collided with a jagged rock spiraling out of control. Another fired wildly, missing its mark. Lyra gasped, clinging to him tightly. "It's okay," Elias said calmly, though his heart raced. "We're almost through." Minutes felt like hours. The rogue faction adjusted, but Elias stayed a step ahead. His human ingenuity allowed him to use the environment as a shield, turning natural hazards into defensive tools. Finally, after a tense sequence of maneuvers, the last of the rogue ships lost contact, retreating into the void. Elias let out a deep breath, his knuckles white from gripping the controls. Lyra pressed her small face against him, whispering something in her alien language. He didn't understand the words, but the emotion was clear: relief, gratitude, and trust. "Good job, Lyra," he said gently. "You stayed brave." Later, on a small hidden moon, Elias landed the fighter to rest and repair minor damages. He checked the engines and hull, ensuring they were ready for the next leg of their journey. Lyra wandered nearby, exploring cautiously, her eyes bright with curiosity despite the recent danger. Solara's voice came through the communicator, calm but tinged with concern. "You did well," she said. "Rogue factions will test us again. But you are remarkable. Humans may lack our power, but you have something stronger: courage, and the will to protect those who cannot defend themselves." Elias nodded. "It's what we do," he replied. "Not for glory, not for orders, but because it's right. That's how humans survive. That's how we make a difference." Solara remained silent for a moment. Then she spoke softly, almost as if thinking aloud. "Perhaps that is why you saved her. Not because of duty, but because your heart would not allow otherwise." Elias looked at Lyra, who was smiling faintly, a small beacon of hope in the quiet moonlight. "Yes," he said, "because she deserved it. And I will keep her safe, no matter what." For the first time, Elias realized something profound. It wasn't just Lyra who was learning about courage and trust. It was Solara, too. She had watched him act when it mattered, defying the rules, thinking creatively, and showing compassion. Humans had something her people often lacked: empathy combined with action. As they rested, Elias and Solara discussed plans for moving forward. The galaxy was full of dangers, from both humans who did not understand his choices and Zitherans who opposed her rule. Every step required strategy, foresight, and unity. "You must continue to trust your instincts," Solara advised. "Your bravery is extraordinary, but caution is still necessary. The rogue faction will return." "I understand," Elias said. "We'll be ready. And together, we can protect Lyra, and perhaps even show both our peoples a better way." The child climbed onto Elias's lap again, tired but safe. He held her gently, feeling a sense of responsibility deeper than anything he had ever known. In that small, quiet moment, he realized that courage was not about facing weapons or battles. It was about protecting life, standing firm, and acting when others hesitate. Above them, the stars continued their silent watch, endless and unchanging. Yet among the celestial lights, a human had proven that bravery, ingenuity, and compassion could stand against overwhelming odds. The rogue Zitherans had tested him, but humanity's spirit had not wavered. And far above, hidden in the shadows of orbit, Solara observed, a mixture of admiration and uncertainty in her gaze. The human had passed the ultimate test. Not only had he saved her daughter, but he had shown the strength of humanity itself, resilient, adaptable, and brave. Elias tightened his grip on Lyra, feeling the weight of both responsibility and hope. The journey was far from over. More challenges would come, more dangers, more enemies. But for now they had survived, and in that survival lay proof of what humans could achieve, not through power, but through courage, heart, and unwavering determination. The rogue faction would strike again, and the galaxy would continue its dance of war and suspicion. But Elias Kane, human pilot and protector, had shown that sometimes a single act of bravery could change everything. And for Lyra, for Solara, and perhaps for two species, that act was only the beginning. The stars glittered overhead as Captain Elias Kane guided the small fighter toward a neutral space station. Lyra sat beside him, her small fingers brushing over the controls with curiosity. The child had grown confident, laughing softly as Elias explained the buttons and switches in simple words. She was no longer just a survivor. She was a symbol of hope, a bridge between humans and Zitherans. Queen Solara's ship hovered nearby, a silent guardian in orbit. She had grown to trust Elias, and her respect for him ran deeper than she had expected. The human had proven courage, intelligence, and compassion beyond what most Zitherans thought possible. Now, together, they were about to take the next step. Peace talks. The space station was bustling with delegates, both human and Zitheran. Tensions ran high, and eyes followed Elias and Lyra wherever they moved. Whispers spread quickly. The human who had saved the enemy's daughter had survived impossible odds, outsmarted rogue factions, and now stood as a living proof that humans could be more than fighters. They could be peacemakers. Elias stepped forward, Lyra holding his hand tightly. He felt her small heartbeat against his own and drew strength from it. He knew that this moment was bigger than any battle he had fought. It was about trust, understanding, and the possibility of a future where both species could coexist. Solara approached, regal and calm, yet there was a subtle softness in her gaze. "Captain Kane," she said, her voice carrying through the station's communication channels. "You have done what few could. You have protected life when most would not. You have shown the strength of your people, not through weapons, but through heart." Elias nodded respectfully. "I only did what I believed was right. Lyra deserved safety, and now perhaps our peoples can learn from that." The talks began. Delegates argued, debated, and questioned, but Elias remained calm. He shared stories of the rescue, of Lyra's bravery and innocence, and of how humans could use creativity and empathy to solve problems. His words were simple, clear, and honest, qualities that resonated even with the most skeptical Zitherans. Solara watched him closely. She had seen him act in battle, protect her daughter, and now speak with clarity and humility. She realized that Elias's actions had done more for peace than fleets of ships or armies ever could. Humans had something Zitherans often overlooked: courage guided by conscience. Lyra, meanwhile, wandered among the delegates, shyly offering small gestures of friendship to those around her. She pointed to the humans and then to the Zitherans as if asking them to understand that they were all connected. Her innocence touched even the hardest hearts. Hours passed, negotiations grew tense, but progress was undeniable. Elias used simple examples, human logic and heartfelt reasoning to bridge the gaps. He reminded everyone that one act of bravery, a single human saving a child, could inspire trust and hope. Slowly, the room began to shift from suspicion to cautious optimism. Finally, the council reached a preliminary agreement. Both sides would honor the safety of children and non-combatants, establish neutral zones for future interactions, and work toward long-term communication channels. It was not CP Elite Peak,